Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Hartsfield. I'm Adult Career Services Coordinator with Starkloff Disability Institute, and we are the Workforce Workplace Disability Advisors. We'll be covering a lot of material today, and we encourage you to submit your questions by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions anonymously. You can also upvote other viewers' questions you would like answered by clicking the thumbs up icon under the question in the Q&A window. We'll try to answer the questions with the most upvotes first. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will post it on our YouTube channel early next week. Today's presentation, Personal Branding for Professionals, is presented by Amy Bollinger and Steve Bauer. Amy and Steve are both vice presidents and partners with Fleischman Hillard, a global public relations and digital marketing agency. Amy currently leads Fleischman Hillard's work for Home Instead Senior Care, the leading provider of in-home care for seniors. During her 24-year tenure with Fleischman Hillard, Amy has contributed to public awareness and community outreach initiatives for a number of government, nonprofit, and corporate clients. She is a past board member of the Disabled Athletes Sports Association and the St. Louis chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. Steve Bauer is one of the global leaders for Fleischman Hillard's Social and Innovation Practice Group. As a member of the Corporate Reputation Group in St. Louis, Steve helps organizations and their executives, subject matter experts, and employees achieve impactful business results using social media. With more than 22 years of PR agency experience, Steve is one of Fleischman Hillard's leading social media trainers and frequently conducts personal brand building workshops, crisis preparation drills, executive social coaching sessions, and ongoing executive thought leadership support for many of the firm's top clients, including AT&T, Emerson, Johnson & Johnson, and Western Union. So thank you, Steve and Amy, for being here, and now I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jason. We really appreciate the invitation to speak with you all today. This is an area that is near and dear to the work that we do in terms of what our brands are, what they say about our clients, the companies that you do business with, as well as what they say about ourselves and the executives that lead those businesses. So we'll spend a bit of time today really talking about what we mean by personal brand, how you can use that brand in building your career opportunities. Is really the emphasis for today, but we'd like to do some sharing with you. This is a really important component of exploration of what your job aspirations are, and so we encourage dialogue and conversation through the chat. If you have questions, please let us know. There will be a couple of spots throughout where we're going to pause and invite questions, but we encourage you to use this time today to really get at the heart of what you're hoping to understand and explore as you build these this approach for yourself. So as Jason mentioned, we're going to talk about that, defining that personal brand. Steve's going to spend some time, as you heard, he's got a lot of expertise in the area of really leveraging online channels in order to build and amplify your brand and your story. And then we're going to talk about what that means a little bit in real life. And some of this is, we talk about the word brand and what does that really mean when we think about what a brand is. And we think about it most often in terms of companies, of the businesses that we do business with. Jeff Bezos has said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And that really speaks to the fact that the organizations do a whole lot of work to determine what they want their brand to be, how they want to live that brand. They spend a lot of resources to really define what the essence of their story is. And they do a lot of work to put that out there. But in the end, that is also impacted by things outside your control in terms of outside perception. So everything you can do to be as clear and defined as you set out to say, this is what I'm about, is what's going to have the most impact, that you have the most control over when it comes to how others perceive you. So the first step, Google yourself. If you haven't done this yet, just search what your name says and what comes up. The first thing that you'll see could be your profile on your company, but a lot of times it's what shows up on LinkedIn. And so that's a channel we'll spend quite a bit of time about today. But the idea too is, beyond Googling yourself online in real life, do that also in real life. So think about how others think about you and how you're showing up when others think about what do I know about Steve Bauer? What's he all about?
Thanks, Amy. This is a Japanese concept called ikigai, and this gets to your essence, your reason for being, or why you wake up each and every morning to do what you do. And if you look at the diagram here, you can see that what we're talking about is finding the intersection of what you love doing, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for so you can earn a living. And you may have 2 or 3 of these in your career. If you only have 1 or 2, you may want to think about how can you find something that is more fulfilling. For me, I love swimming with my kids, and I'm good at it, but nobody's going to pay me for it, and it's not necessarily something that the world needs. I also love doing these types of training to help young professionals as well as established senior leaders build their personal brand and learn how to use social media to advance in their careers. It's something I love doing, I'm good at, it's something the world needs, and it's something that I have built my career around. As we go through this session today, I encourage you all to think about what can you do to continue to find ways to find that intersection of these 4 areas.
So when we think about that, it comes down to that essence of finding your passion and finding what comes together in that magic space of where you want to put your purpose in life is from a professional standpoint. We really look at how you can use your brand attributes and how you want to define yourself to advance those opportunities. So when you look at it, think about it as that trademark, that piece of that essence of you that is that element for entering into a new career or advancing within your career or developing as a leader within your industry. When we look at what makes a successful personal brand, there's 2 components that really have to come together. We addressed this a little bit, but what are the top 5 characteristics that describe how you want to be known? And then consider what are the 5 characteristics that your colleagues or others around you would say define you. Do they match up? Hopefully they do. Often they don't. And that shows that there's some intention that needs to be put toward really leaning in and living those attributes that you want to come across. It can be that you are the things that you set out to be, but you're also other things. In terms of other, sometimes it might be, I really want to be known as we have these examples up here, differentiating, relevant, credible, aspirational. But these are things that, those are things that really describe the aspects that you want to go for. Are those pieces that you want to be known for matching up against those characteristics? So for me, for example, the 5 ways that I would like to be seen by my colleagues, I want to be known for my integrity. I want to be known for being collaborative, purposeful, adaptive, and compassionate. Those are the pieces that I feel are the strongest components of what I can bring to my colleagues and to my teams. Is that how others see me? In some cases, from what I've seen from others, I would say yes, but that has not always been the case. I've had 24 years in this business to really put intention toward defining that brand for myself, and I really hope it does come through. But that's also something that you look at, how does that differentiate you from your colleagues? What can you say about how you do your work makes you credible and the experience that you have? How does it make you relevant to the position that you have? And is it aspirational? Is it something to continue to work toward? There are several elements within my performance review every year that have been the same for 24 years in terms of things that I will continue to work on because I can never completely master them. One of them, I will tell you, is time management, but I won't go into the others. But there's going to be things that you're going to be working on that will continue to be a journey for you throughout your career. And that is something to definitely embrace and to work toward. So these are some questions to ask yourself as you do that. One of those questions is, what are those 5 ways that you want to be defined, and how would you say others describe you? But look into that in terms of what are those professional aspirations? How does your experience complement your company's perspective or the company that you seek to, where you seek employment? what are you really good at? What do you succeed at? What value do you bring to the team and to others? And then what are those personal passions, hobbies, and interests that really round out who you are? An area that can come into play on that, for example, in a field like what we do, which is public relations, we work for clients who really need to tell their brand stories in the media. And there's all kinds of ways that can take shape. I'm a dog lover, and I have a dog. And I have used that work within my existing client, as we mentioned, Home Instead Senior Care. We did a program all about helping seniors understand how to incorporate pet interactions into their lives. Not every older adult should have a pet of their own. They bring risks and they bring hazards and a lot of responsibility. There's a whole lot of ways that you can have a dog in your life. I pulled a lot of my personal interest and passion into how we built that program. So that's an example of how you can take what you know and love and apply it within your professional setting. So with that, I'll encourage within the chat to say, what are some of those questions that you ask of yourselves? What are some ways that you would like to be described? Or what aspects, if you're struggling with how you want to describe yourself, think first about what you admire in others. So if there's leaders that you've worked with and colleagues that you've worked with, what aspects do you really appreciate in their style or their approach of leadership? And we'll go ahead and ask you guys to chat that in. And Jason, if you can help us maybe talk through what some of those are. Oh, I see them now.
Sure. So what are, if I understand the question you're asking correctly, you're asking people to put in the chat, which you can activate the chat by clicking the chat button at the bottom of your screen.
Got it.
What are the attributes that you describe as yourself? What are the attributes that you admire in others? Did I get that correctly?
Yeah. I'm not seeing any chats come in just yet, so we won't pause on this, but I encourage you to be thinking about that, maybe write it down in a notebook, and come back to that as we go through the session today. Steve.
Next, as we think about how do you address those questions and turn that into a short story about who you are. You may or may not be familiar with the phrase, your elevator pitch. Well, if you think about riding in an elevator on a short ride and you meet someone, it may be a hiring decision maker or an influencer at a company that you'd really like to work for, or it may be your boss's boss at your existing company. And you get a very simple, open-ended question, so tell me what you're working on, or what are you interested in? How can you take those key attributes, your experiences and your interests, and bring those to life in a short and succinct story that you can wrap up in the short time of an elevator ride? This is something that I encourage CEOs to do, as well as those just getting started in their career. Regardless of what your level of experience is, regardless of your industry, regardless of any other factor, we all have good stories to tell. And we want to think about how can we tell those stories in a way that is not just promoting ourselves, but really thinking about addressing some of the interests, the needs, and the curiosities of the audience that we're speaking to. And if I can leave you with one thing from this whole presentation today, it's not about you, it's about your audience. So think about, who are you trying to reach? Who are you trying to engage with? What might they find interesting to help build a dialogue, to deepen relationships, or create a win-win scenario that will help you and help them and help their company?
That's great, Steve. And so we've got a few elements that have come in through the chat, and I'd like to address some of those now. Some good qualities that folks have called out: trustworthy, dedicated, detail-oriented, intelligent, genuine, persistent, hardworking, compassionate. These are all things I think we could agree we want to see in ourselves and see in our leaders. These are the types of people we want to work for. We also look at bringing people into the discussion This person likes that my manager is a good listener, and how he demonstrates that he's a good listener because he reflects that during the conversation. That's a fantastic tool to be able to be an active listener and to really show the people that you're speaking with that you're understanding what they're saying, and to ensure you understand what they say before you move on. A lot of times we have a conversation and we may come away with two very different perspectives on what landed in that conversation. I'd also like to say this person that kind of called out, they're having a hard time because they're maybe struggling with their bosses right now and really thinking in kind of a negative place. That's hard. That's a really tough spot to be when you feel that your leader doesn't support you, understand you, or advocate for you. So I would encourage in that situation to really take a pause and think about where, how you react to that. Think about how that might change how you want to be as a leader when your time comes. And I will say you're a leader day to day with your own colleagues and your teammates. So while you may not be in the boss's office, you are a leader within your organization and how you adapt and how you respond to those situations. Leadership is not about position. It's about perspective. And you can own that role of leadership within yourself and within your team. And that's a way that you can rise within your organization to help make a difference. I would also encourage, if you're really struggling with a boss, to find a way to have a conversation, either with your boss directly or with your human resources department, if there are serious challenges happening. I always try to remember too, when I'm struggling with someone, when I feel the relationship isn't working and I'm really not understanding how to work with this person, I also pause and try to just put myself in their shoes for a moment. Try to understand where they're coming from, what might be going on in their lives that is added stress and pressure, what pressure they're getting from their boss and their leaders. Those are ways that can help us pause and have a little compassion for where that person might be coming from. I can tell you, as again, I've been in the working business for 24 years, and I've never come across a leader or a boss who didn't have, at the true to heart, good intention. They may not always come across that way, and I've struggled with a lot of them. But pausing to understand where they're coming from and having that open dialogue can really help address some of those concerns and ways that things are going.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Now we're going to jump in to talk about building your online brand. We've defined what it means to have a personal brand. It isn't a tagline like just do it. It is what others say about you. And it's not always necessarily readily obvious or clear, but as we go through this session and you think about some of the attributes that you want to be known for, we're going to help you make your personal brand more clear to others. Now, you may say, well, I don't have a LinkedIn profile, or I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile in a couple years. And does that matter? Well, if you're looking to develop a professional career, it does matter. And we're going to talk you through how to do that today. But the reality is, chances are, if you've ever engaged on social media or interacted in any particular way online, you are leaving a digital footprint. And that footprint may be on Instagram, on Snapchat, on LinkedIn. It could be in the news. It could be on photo sharing sites. If you go back and Google yourself, what shows up? Ideally, as you're looking to advance in your career, it would be your LinkedIn profile, because that establishes your professional credentials and your experience. But you may find other things as well. And keep in mind, what you post on TikTok may also be seen by that recruiter or that human resource manager that you're looking to connect with for that next career opportunity. So just think for a moment about the way that you conduct yourself holistically online, and make sure that what people can find about you ladders back to your professional goals. That doesn't mean you can't use other social networks, but be mindful about what you say, particularly in 2020, when we are in a very highly polarized environment and we're facing a lot of changes and there's a lot of pressure and uncertainty. Hiring managers are looking at people's online presence and their online brand more than ever before. to know if this is somebody that they'd like to hire. Here's a snapshot of my LinkedIn profile, and we'll talk through some of these elements here in a bit, but some of the key features that you'll see here are you've got a professional photo, you have the ability to upload a customized background image, and your about section. That's the perfect place to define your personal brand. What is it about you? What is your ikigai? What is your reason for being, for waking up in the morning? Write this in a few short paragraphs that can give people the essence of who you are, what you do, and more importantly, why you do what you do. And as we go on here, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other ways that you can build your personal brand. Also, ways to protect yourself, looking at things like privacy settings and looking at what content has been uploaded before. Is it easily findable? Are your profile settings open or private? So just take a minute if you haven't done so, through that Google search, see what's showing up and think about ways that you can keep your private personal relationships and conversations more private and make open the best of who you are in a professional environment. We're going to spend the most of our time today talking about LinkedIn because LinkedIn is the #1 social network for business professionals. When it first got started, yes, LinkedIn was your online resume and your Rolodex, but now it is so much more. It is a powerful content engine. It is where business leaders and decision makers go to gather research, to build and strengthen relationships, and to make decisions. And if you're not on LinkedIn, regardless of your level of seniority, the number of years you've been in your field, or what industry you're in, having a solid, updated LinkedIn profile can only help you in your career. So we'll talk about some of the ways that you can do that here right now.
Hey, Steve?
Yes.
Hey, Des, can you go back a couple of slides and read what some of the statistics you have there are for our audience who's called in?
No problem. You bet. As Amy will go back just a couple slides here. So on the slides here, first one is as we talk about recruiters. 75% of recruiters are required to do online research of candidates. What's the first place they're going to go? Google. The other stat here is 70% report that they've rejected candidates because of information that they found online. To Amy's point earlier, put yourself in that recruiter's shoes. Think about their perspective. What is it that they're seeing about you? And is this something that will help or hurt your chances of getting hired? Here on this slide, we talk about 75% of users on LinkedIn are using the platform to make buying decisions, whether that's about company or even about hiring. And 75% prefer to work with recommendations from their professional network. The old saying is absolutely true. It's not always what you know, it's also who you know. So building your connections on LinkedIn do make a big difference. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
3 key steps to building out and updating your LinkedIn profile. First, you have to take control. If you haven't set up a profile, it's very easy to do so. One of the first things that you want to do is go in and manage your settings. Look at your privacy, your communications, and some of the other elements there to determine what do you want others to see about you? How visible do you want to be? How often do you want LinkedIn to communicate with you? Making sure you update your profile with some of the key elements we'll talk about in a little bit. And again, making those connections. That's how you can leverage your network, your relationships to open new doors. Second is gaining industry insights. Just keeping up on trends. What are potential employers or their leaders talking about? You can research your clients or customers or their competitors. And you can also learn by seeing what others are doing on the platform to see what's appropriate and how can you learn by modeling behavior of those who are doing it really well. Over time, as you get more comfortable on LinkedIn, you can also demonstrate your leadership by showing up, by interacting with content and engaging with others. And ultimately, when you're even more comfortable, we encourage you to share your point of view on industry-related topics and trends. We talked about settings and privacy. There are 4 key elements: your account, privacy, ads, and communications. Privacy and communications are among the 2 most important ones. We don't have time to get into all of this here today, but I encourage you to spend a little bit of time and scroll through. When you click on each of these on LinkedIn, it will give you a detailed description of what each of those options mean and what you can do to optimize those for what works best for you. Next, as you think about optimizing your profile, you want to upload a professional photo, that background picture. I talked about the About section. That's your short bio, telling who you are and why you do what you do. Provide as much detail as you can about your career progression. Where have you worked? And not just give the company and the dates, but also give some details around what did you do there? What were you responsible for? What did you accomplish? Building out things like skills. I am good at integrated marketing, or I am good at sales lead generation. Accomplishments and following. Encourage you all to think about, who are you following on LinkedIn? Because that can tell a lot about who you are and what you're interested in. You can follow influencers, leaders like Bill Gates or Richard Branson. That's different than having a connection to them. Following someone basically gives them permission to publish in your newsfeed. When you go to LinkedIn, the first thing it shows you is all the posts from others. So follow people, companies, leaders, and institutions that you find interesting. And then also on LinkedIn, you can create your own custom URL. And when you're on the homepage of your LinkedIn profile, very easy to do. Go in the upper right corner, it says Edit Public Profile and URL. When you click there, you can create a URL with your name that makes it much easier for people to find you online. It also helps boost your search engine discoverability, so people will find your LinkedIn profile before they find that latest TikTok video that you posted. Saw a question just pop in about how long an About section should be. Typically, it's 2 to 3 paragraphs, but it can be 2 to 3 sentences, enough to give the essence of who you are and what you stand for, what your higher purpose is, and why someone may want to connect with you. Always encourage you, think about what's the first 8 words on your About section, because as people are looking on mobile, they'll have to click See More to read the rest, and you want to capture their attention in that very first intro sentence. On LinkedIn, the big platform feature is about connections. This is about building relationships, professional business relationships. Everyone has different rules of thumb about what they will accept or not accept from a connection request. What I encourage you to do is send connection requests to people that you certainly know, that you work with, people that you've met in real life, or if people see your picture or your name, they will more than likely have a recollection of who you are. And if they don't remember who you are, or you're trying to introduce yourself, when you click connect on someone's profile, you can click add a note here. Very important to add a personal description. Hi, Amy, it was great to see you at the Starkloff webinar today. Thanks so much for sharing your great tips and insights. That tells people who you are, how you met, and why they should accept your connection request. LinkedIn requests with a personal invitation generate 3 times more acceptance rate than those with a generic connection request alone. Who should you follow on LinkedIn? Lots of different options. You can follow hashtags on LinkedIn. Did you know that? You can also see which hashtags are generating the most attention based on followers. Use that search bar at the top of the platform to find out. You can follow media, You can follow companies, you can follow thought leaders, and look to find people who you want to emulate in your career and who are doing a great job. You can also follow your company's competitors, but I don't encourage you to interact with their content. You can follow them just to pay attention and keep up to speed, but best practice is not to engage with your competitors in any way. Finally, getting engaged. On LinkedIn, people are using the platform not just to build connections or share their professional experience, but it's about thought leadership, sharing professional articles, news, information. Not sure where to get started? Start by reading through the content in your news feed, clicking the like button, or clicking on the comment button, adding a congratulations, or adding your personal perspective. It's much easier to establish thought leadership by connecting and commenting and interacting with content from others than it is to create your own thought leadership from scratch. That's a great place to start. And if you don't have the LinkedIn app, highly encourage you to go to your mobile phone app store and download it. If you can use that LinkedIn mobile app, it's a great way to help stay up to speed while you're on the go. LinkedIn has introduced some new features to the platform. Polls where you can ask questions. You can add an audio name pronunciation, which I just did mine the other day. That way people can know how to say your name. So when they meet you in person or they're calling you on the phone or vice versa, you want to know how to pronounce someone's name before you meet them. See if they've added that pronunciation there on that personal recording. LinkedIn, like some other social networks, have added live broadcasting features so you can tune in. And you can also look for LinkedIn stories, much like Instagram and Facebook and other platforms. That's coming soon. So what should you share? Ultimately, like I said earlier, it's not about you, it's about your audience. So if you're going to share articles or photos, keep in mind that it's okay to be personal and have a bit of personality, but it also should be professional. Save the fun other photos for other social networks. This is about business. Always look to add value to your network. What can you do to help others? That should really be your mantra on LinkedIn when you're thinking about sharing content. Will my audience find this interesting? And does this help them in some way? And don't just click the share button. Always add your personal perspective. Otherwise, you're helping to just pass along content from somebody else instead of building your own personal brand. I'll read through these very quickly and then we'll move on, but these are some best practices that I encourage everyone to think about for LinkedIn. First and foremost, use the platform to build relationships and send those personal connection requests. Make sure you've got that app on your mobile device and follow company leaders, your own CEO or leaders if they're active on LinkedIn at your place of employment. Use LinkedIn to listen and learn, see what others are saying. Keep up on industry news and happenings. 5, engage with others. Sometimes a simple like is an easy way to get a reminder that you have this connection and this relationship. Focus on your audience. We've said this multiple times. 7, celebrate your company. So if your company is posting on LinkedIn, make sure that it's okay within your company policy, but most companies encourage their employees to engage and interact and share great company news as long as it's meant for public consumption and public sharing. 8, add your personal perspective. Don't just pass along what others are saying. LinkedIn, you can use tags and hashtags. That basically helps to thread conversations or notify people that you mention them in a post. When you get more comfortable, 10 is publish original content. 11, ways that you can do that. You can upload photos, record a quick video, or even presentations and other documents. You can add those to LinkedIn as well. And finally, promote your LinkedIn profile. Once you've got your profile in a really good place, add it to places like the signature of your email. Make sure you've got that custom URL that we talked about creating, so you can make it really easy for people to discover you and remember you and engage with you. Final tips, where do I get started? Start with one post per week. That doesn't have to be an original post. Start by adding one comment per week. What I like to tell people is when you're on other social networks, you are spending time. On LinkedIn, you are investing your time in your career. So invest some time in building your brand and advancing your career. And finally, for me, the 2% rule. Think about if we work an average of 50 hours a week, 2% of that work week is 30 minutes. So my ask of all of you, spend 30 minutes a week, whether that's updating your profile, reading content from others, scrolling through your newsfeed, liking, commenting, and sharing. But 30 minutes a week, 2% of your time is all you need to help enhance your brand and make a big difference in your career.
Thanks, Steve. Before we move on, we've got a couple of questions that came in on some of these topics. How easy is it to unfollow a company?
Very easy. If you go to their page and you're following, click the follow button again and it will unfollow them. You can also, as you're scrolling through your news feed, click in the upper right-hand corner and you can give feedback to LinkedIn. I want to see more of this. I want to see less of this. I'm not interested in this type of content, to help inform the algorithm of what you want to see.
That's great. And then is Twitter connected with LinkedIn? Do you have to keep both updated?
Twitter and LinkedIn are separate. Now you can choose to share to both platforms. What I encourage people to do is keep your social networks separate. You've got different relationships with different audiences. What you post on Twitter can and should be different than what you post on LinkedIn. So while there are ways to connect them, they are two very different platforms serving different needs and different audiences. So I would encourage you, you can link back in your bio from one to another, but don't necessarily use a one-size-fits-all broadcasting approach. So what you post on one goes to both channels.
Okay. Any other questions, folks, before we move on? Feel free to chat them in. There will be room at the end to address anything that we have missed. So let's talk a little bit about what this means to live your brand in real life. We've had some really great tips, and right now we all feel like we're living online. That's the reality of living within a pandemic. There are ways that even without or outside of online and social environments that we're interacting with our colleagues virtually through phone calls, web chats, those sorts of things. It's that in-person, interpersonal relationship we're going to spend a few minutes now talking about and what it really means to live your personal brand every day. That brand is that total experience of having a relationship with you. Beyond your name, it's your personal packaging. How do you show up? Your talents and your skills. What are you really good at? What strengths do you bring to the table? What role do you play within your organization? Those daily activities, your behavior, and how you come across in the actions that you take throughout your day. It's your attitude and your personality. Are you positive? Are you optimistic? Is it something that people want to naturally be around you because you are someone fun to be with? It's your successes and your failures. And I like to say how you react to both of those. How you react to your successes, how you react to your failures and respond to those situations define who you are and demonstrate to others your resilience and your humility in terms of how you operate as a teammate. Understanding of and relationships with those you seek to influence. To Steve's point, it's not about you, it's about your audiences. And in these cases, if you want to influence your leaders within your organization to recognize your potential and give you advancement opportunities, if you want to influence your teammates to trust you and to rely on you, if you want to influence those who report to you to come to you and to trust you, those are ways that you can live that brand. And then ultimately that ability to change and stay relevant over time. This can be happens in multiple ways. Most of the time we're talking about over the course of a career and the way that you might be able to adapt to new situations that come your way as you take on new responsibilities and new roles within your organization. I've been with Fleischmann-Hillard my entire career. I started as an intern while I was still finishing my last semester of college. And I'm, let's just say, several decades past that at this point. And I've had, I would say, at least 4 different jobs within the same business, and the ability to adapt and change from a public affairs perspective, from a marketing perspective, to now corporate reputation. And what I bring from each of those experiences and how I learn from those experiences and bring them into my new line of work has been really relevant. Let's take a moment and talk about the adaptability we're all experiencing within what has become the year of 2020. And I think that's pretty obvious to most. We've had to really change and adapt our entire way of living and working with each other. We've had colleagues who have started their career within the pandemic. We have colleagues who have changed jobs within the pandemic. And the ability to be adaptive to the new situations that we have are going to be a bit about how you show up. It's going to define kind of how you interact going forward too. So let's talk a bit about networking. There's a couple of slides. The progression of the slides through this section, we're going to talk a little bit about networking. How do we get the job? And then how do we make the most once we're in that position? 70 to 80% of jobs are found through networking, talking to folks that you know and having them introduce you to people who can help within the career industry that you want to explore. When you get into a conversation with someone that you're networking with, again, can't say it enough, talk more about them than they do about you. The 80-20 rule, 80% of your conversation should be talking about the potential employer or the person that you're interacting with, asking them questions, understanding their perspective, asking their advice and their thoughts on what's important within that line of work. Just 20% talking about you. At this stage, you're wanting to show interest and understanding of their role and position or their organization, and think about how that can then in turn, you can apply what you know to go forward within that path. You want to make sure you have questions, have informed questions, and be ready when you walk into one of these meetings. Don't just kind of go in thinking, oh, we're just going to have a conversation. You can control and drive that conversation. Examples would be, what's your typical day like? What do you like most about what you do? Are there professional associations you recommend? What those 3 things, there's lots of questions that flow in, but what those 3 things, those 3 questions get into can really round out and give you an understanding of what you can expect in that type of a job, what are the benefits of that type of a position, and then how do you build and understand a broader understanding of trends and perspectives of that industry. You also want to think about having those helpful suggestions and strategic introductions to others. Be helpful to the person that you're networking with. If they're talking about a challenge they're having and you know someone that can help solve their challenge, make that introduction and be ready to be helpful and make that a reciprocal relationship. And then remember that elevator speech that Steve talked about. Can you sum up who you are and where you want to go in a short elevator ride that may last seconds? When you get the interview, and by in person these days is very likely on a screen like this. And so you want to make sure that you are showing up and treating that web interview the same way you would an in-person interview. Make sure that you're dressed appropriately, that you're ready to sit and have a conversation. But ultimately, looking into, before you go into that, research and prepare the company and the people within the organization. Look them up on LinkedIn. That's the #1 place that I start when I'm looking to understand in a new client situation as we're approaching those. Understand the company. Etiquette basics. Please. Thank you. Appreciate being there that day. Your body language, make sure you're smiling and you're kind of reacting to the conversation. Be an active listener with how you're participating. Go in with a positive attitude, open and understanding of the questions that are being asked, but also answer those questions intelligently and then stop talking. And this is hard. To be able to answer a question and pause and not go on about the extensive stories that you might pop into your head and how that relates to all kinds of things in your life. This is part of an active conversation and active listening. Answer that question, but pause and give a chance for that interviewer to ask additional questions or follow up. And again, ask smart questions. Think about what you want to go into that meeting understanding and knowing. Examples might be some of those others we had within the networking. What is your day typically like? What are you looking for in a person for this, the candidate for this position? How do you define success? How can you see this person in this new role being successful? What does it take? Think about what those questions are. There's also a lot you can do on Google to identify what other smart interview questions are, but be ready with those and be prepared. Once you get into the position that you're looking for, you want to be known as the person who makes things happen. You want to take the ball. You want to be proactive. You want to go that extra step and make sure that everything that you touch is the very best it can be. You want to produce those final work products. So when I'm sending a draft to Steve to review for a presentation that he's going to take to a client, I'm not going to rely on Steve to catch my typos. I'm going to catch them before they go to Steve. A lot of times those are the things that we don't necessarily see ourselves. You can read a slide 6 or 7 times and perhaps miss something. So if you have the opportunity within your organization to have an administrative assistant or a partner who can look at it and read behind you, that's always very helpful as well. If you don't have access to an admin, a colleague, a friend, someone, depending on what that work product is, make sure that it looks good before it goes on. The can-do confidence, and I can't stress how important this is. If I'm working with a colleague, I need to be able to trust that that person wants the assignment, can do the assignment, and is confident in the assignment. So you want to show that enthusiasm and that passion for those new challenges. You want to take action. You don't want to wait for your leader to come to you. You want to say, hey, I've got some time this afternoon. Is there anything you need some help with? Offering solutions and not problems. If you're running into a challenge with an assignment that you're working on, before you go to your boss or your teammate and say, I can't figure this out, think about what a possible solution may be. It may not be the best solution, but demonstrate that you have thought through how you might address this. You might say, Amy, I'm having a problem. I don't see the solution. How can I come with a solution? It's not about necessarily finding the final. It's about thinking through what the options might be and being ready to have a conversation. And instead of saying no, if someone comes to you and says, hey, do you have time this afternoon to do this? Or time this week to do this? You might look at your calendar and say, oh my gosh, there's no way that I'm going to be able to get to that plus everything else that's already on my plate. I would encourage you, before you say the word no, to pause and say, can we talk about the priorities? Here's what else I have to get done before the end of the week. I would love to help you out. Can you help me see what might be able to wait until next week so that I can prioritize this other assignment? Talk things through. I guarantee you, your team leader will say, okay, let's really think about what's important, and they can help you solve that I don't have time problem. And then when it comes to deadlines, you meet them or you beat them. If you're not going to meet a deadline, there's plenty of deadlines, guys, that I don't meet. I always reach out in advance and say, hey, Erin, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get to this by the deadline we set today. Can we talk about what might be able to adjust within that deadline? What's the thinking behind that deadline, and how can we move it on? Really avoiding that petty gossip. Those who are chronically negative, complain about things, don't engage, guys. That can be really detrimental to your own emotional and well-being when it comes to your position. Really try to think about how you want to keep things on a positive keel. Being informed and staying curious. A lot of this was covered in what Steve had to say, so we'll talk quickly here, but you want to be that expert on your business and the relevant trends. You want to read news, magazines, novels, watch TV, be a human, be able to talk about what's going on in the world and how does that apply to the work that you do. Talk to your colleagues, ask them about recent projects, observe what's going on around you and ask questions. Really important when it comes to personal communication. Right now, we're all relying a whole lot on technology, but it can't be a crutch. Texting and email are fine when it comes to quick information and updates, but when you have tough information to share, questions that you want to have asked, as much as you can, try to get that live conversation or a phone call. Even a 10-minute phone call can really help break through and help ensure that both of you ensure what's going on with that situation and how to address it. And then that personal packaging, make sure that you're occasion appropriate. Be ready if the boss wants to come meet with you. This one's important. Carry that notebook. Be ready to write something down if you either learn a new piece of information or get an assignment. And then we talked a bit about making sure that your projects are well written, organized, and ready to be received. Be present. This is important in terms of maintaining those regular office hours. If you're going to be late, let your boss know or your teammates know. When you need to be away from your desk for work, try to stay in touch. We have off-site meetings, we are driving, we are doing those being out of the way. Make sure folks know how and when to reach you in case of an emergency. Same for when you're outside of the office. Guys, take your weekends, take your vacations, but depending on the type of position you have, it might be important for you to be aware and up to speed of what happens during those off hours. So be ready to kind of check email or check your voicemail if needed. But when you're outside of work hours, depending on your job, people still need to rely on you in a lot of cases. Ultimately, being accessible when you're in the office, keeping that calendar up to date is so important. Technology now allows us to schedule meetings with our colleagues. Make sure that when you're available is showing on your calendar. And then we want to make sure that you're being gracious. Thank those that help you succeed. Send those handwritten notes or a personal token of appreciation. Watch out for birthdays, successes, milestones. Help your colleagues and teammates celebrate. Those are things they're excited about, and they're going to appreciate seeing that from you. When you have new teammates, include them. It can be really hard to start a new job, as many of you know. Make sure that you include them when it comes to lunch plans or a group happy hour or a virtual Zoom to catch up with colleagues. Minding your business P's and Q's, as they say. Make sure you answer your phone as if a VIP is calling. Just be polite, be respectful, answer your phone, let them know who's answering the phone. Don't use the speakerphone unless you ask first. A lot of folks don't want to have their conversation broadcast to those around you, and especially when we do get back to that in-person environment at work, you're going to be sharing space with a lot of others. Show the respect and use your handset in order to do that before you start a speakerphone. Make sure that you reply promptly. Introduce folks. If you're bringing someone else to a meeting with you or someone else onto a phone call with you, let that other person know who's with you and why they're there. And then finally, keeping that brand relevant. A brand does not have a long life cycle. A personal brand must be evolved to stay relevant over time. So you really want to continue to look for learning opportunities, adoption of new skills and talents. Participating in webinars like this are really important part of what that is. So look for those opportunities. A lot of companies offer their own webinars and professional development sessions. If yours does not, be looking for what opportunities might be available through your industry association or through other. LinkedIn is a great place to look for where relevant webinars are coming up, but be looking for those opportunities to hone and advance your skills. And then seeking that feedback. Ask your boss, ask your teammates, how am I doing? Don't just wait for the annual review in order to see what you're doing well or what could be worked on. Find ways to have that regular check-in with your supervisor. And if that's not already part of the culture at your work, ask for it. Ask to have a meeting. The occasional coffee or lunch can go a long way in helping you understand how you're perceived and how you can improve on a day-to-day basis. With that, I'll pause and see if there's any other questions, or Jason, if you feel there's anything we haven't quite covered yet today.
First question, we're getting a lot of different people asking about the availability of the slides. I know that Fleischman Hillard, you use these presentations with working with clients who are paying you for services. We are going to have this video up on YouTube, and just like a video at YouTube, if you need to read the slide, you can pause the video, read the content that you need. I know it's more of a challenge if you're using a screen reader or something like that, but we do need to be respectful that this is also Fleischman Hillard's property, and we can't really share it without their permission. Other questions, what are P's and Q's? I don't really know what P's and Q's are. That's just, etiquette, respectful behavior. Another question, who would be a great choice to seek feedback from my current brand or resume?
So is your job seeking, is that the question? So you don't currently have a supervisor or someone that you're working with. You've got a resume, you want to kind of look at how your brand looks. I would say in that context, find a trusted colleague, find a mentor. So you can ask your parents, you could ask a professor. I think when we look at, I know when I was starting out, I had a really trusted advisor at my university. We had a great relationship, and I sat down with Ellie Chapman and I said, can you please tell me what you think about this? Are there some strengths? Are there some areas I can improve within my specific resume? There's a lot of online resources with best practices, but I hear you. When it comes to, okay, now I've written it, what do I do? find someone who is in the professional business and can help you walk through that, look line by line, and look at that. I will say P's and Q's. I was always taught that that's pleases and thank yous. It's to Jason's point, it's your basic etiquette and politeness for sure.
Thank you. Another question we have, and this came up actually in our pre-registration questions. How do you navigate changing your personal brand if you're transitioning between careers?
Yeah, I'll try and tackle that one. So I've been doing this for 22 plus years now. As Amy mentioned, I also have redefined my personal brand probably close to a dozen times in my 22, 23 years in this field. Before that, I was actually an English teacher working in Mexico. And you may think, well, how does that translate to working in public relations or digital and social media marketing? What you may not realize is that a lot of the skills that you develop in any position are transferable and help to build on who you are. I gained my confidence and my ability to speak in front of groups from going out there and teaching in front of classrooms day in and day out to people who spoke a different language than I did. And I had to learn and adapt, be aware of different cultural nuances. So what I encourage you all to do is think about, even though you may be looking at something that might be totally different in a new industry or in a new field, look for opportunities to identify those skills, those areas of experience that you've developed that are still relevant and applicable and can help add value to that new position or that new industry that you're looking to get into.
Thank you. We have a comment from one of the panelists. I think it's a good thing to say. As a former recruiter, do your research. If you pay someone to help you with your resume, there are a lot of people out there taking money who really don't provide value. Starkloff, we work with a lot of different employers, and over the several years that the Career Academy has been active, we've picked up a lot of some good general practices about resumes, and then beyond a certain point, it becomes just sort of like the personal preference of that recruiter. But again, I would also really back up what Amy and Steve are saying. You can have an okay resume, but if you know the right people, you're a lot more likely to be successful. That doesn't mean you can neglect the resume, but it's not the most important part of your job search. Amy, Steve, do you agree with that statement? Disagree?
I do, absolutely. I think a resume is what gets you in the door more often than not. But once you're there, you've got to have the ability to articulate who you are, the value that you bring to the organization, and why you are the best candidate. Your resume is certainly important, but it is not the only factor in consideration when you're looking for a job. So look for friends, others to help you, and you can certainly find somebody who you don't have to pay for those services to give you some tips and advice.
I would agree, and I would also encourage to pay really close attention and invest time in each individual cover letter. The resume, by nature, is something that you're going to share with a lot of organizations, and so it's going to have everything that you do, and it's going to have your complete profile. And when I'm doing interviews of potential candidates, I do reference that to help drive the conversation and identify where I want to ask questions. But what gets you that in the door too is that note that you send with the resume that says, here's what I see about your organization that I admire, and here's what I can bring to you as an organization. Here's why you should consider me, why you should interview me. And so use that cover letter it needs to be succinct, because you need to make sure that that recruiter reads it, but you want to bring something of yourself into that, bring that brand that you want to convey into that cover letter to help get that attention.
All right. Well, we've got a couple more questions. I know we're right at 11 o'clock. Amy, Steve, do you mind if we bring them up?
Happy to help. Let's do it.
A few people have asked this, especially on registration, and I'll back this up from experience working in the Career Academy. We have a lot of people who are later in their career, 40s, 50s, sometimes 60s, who are coming and saying, I had to take 3, 4, 5 years off. I spent 15 years as a mom. I'm in a new state. I don't have any contacts. I'm in a brand new career. Do I have the time to do all of this branding? How can I do this in a quick way? What should I do?
Yeah, I think the main point is, again, use some of those questions that we posed to think about how you want to define yourself and how you want to bring that forward. It doesn't have to be weeks of self-exploration. A lot of these are pretty simple questions. Look at, again, what you admire about others and how you want to bring that into yourself. I would say changing careers in a mid-stage. As I've mentioned, I've been in the same business my entire career. I'll share the story of a colleague. So as a teammate, what I look for in someone who is changing careers or changing positions, I'm looking for, do they have those building blocks of what we are looking for at our business and what our clients need? And how can I see where that person, to Steve's point, someone who was an educator knows how to stand up in front of a group of people and speak. Someone who managed teams, whatever kind of team, has experience managing people, interacting, problem solving, identifying challenges and solutions. So some of those building blocks are really important. I think as you come into a new career, being open and flexible and humble are going to be really important. I have a colleague who changed careers at the age of 50, and he was reporting to me on a project. And I can say I'm younger than that by a bit when this started. And so when this person came to our team and really could have come in with this attitude, he had managed an entire department. He had managed 40 people with varying deadlines and very complex type of a business. And he walked in the door and he said, how can I be helpful? How can I be useful? And he started at what would be kind of a mid to junior level within our business. He rose quickly because he demonstrated that he could adapt, he could understand what our clients need, and he could move forward. But what I would say the attributes that came through, he was adaptive, he was collaborative, he was open to feedback, he listened, he asked questions, he wanted to understand, he was enthusiastic. So those were all really great qualities that served him well. And he's moved up quickly and is now managing projects himself after just a couple of years, and has really been seen as a strong client lead and a strong strategic partner for us as our teams and for our clients.
Okay, thank you. Another question that we had is about mentorship. How valuable is a mentor? What should you look for in a mentor? How can they help you in your job search?
I'll chime in, and then Amy,
Steve,
feel
you look
free
like you
to
want to
add.
say.
Yeah, you bet.
Go.
I have been on both sides of the coin, and in order to really build a strong mentor-mentee relationship, it needs to be about a shared exchange of value. And if you're looking to find a mentor, you should also look to find somebody who is doing some of the key things in their career that you want to aspire to be like, but also think about what value can you bring to them. We've done some programs where we've actually created reverse mentorships, where new, fresh out of school, junior level staff have been paired with senior level leaders within our company, and they've actually created a great value exchange by senior leaders providing some coaching on professionalism, communication, how to navigate the big world of the professional environment. And the entry-level candidates actually provided a lot of teaching and value around how to use social media in a personal and confidential way, something that some of the senior leaders may have not had much experience on or weren't necessarily comfortable asking. So mentorships can be great. Just think about, don't approach it from what can I get from this person. You need to be respectful and cognizant of the time commitment. People often have a lot of other things on their plate, and they're giving their time often because they believe in you, because they want to help, and they think that there's something that they can offer of value. But you should look for ways that you can add value as well.
Great. There's been so much information in this presentation. I really want to thank you both, and I want to thank our audience for your great questions. We're getting a lot of questions about cover letters, resumes. I do want to come in and say that on September 8th, we're going to be starting our capstone course with Starkloff Disability Institute. This is a 10-week intensive career development course designed for professionals with disabilities who want to learn everything they can about how to find and keep careers of their choice. We'll have companies like Fleischman Hillard and guest speakers. If you are interested, visit our website, www.starkloff.org. And go to the For Candidates page. You'll find all kinds of information on that. And if you can't take the class but are still interested, Starkloff provides one-on-one career consultation services. Myself and my colleague Susan Menhard are willing to work with you if you have questions about resumes, cover letters, disability disclosure, anything like that. Feel free to reach out to us. At this time, this will end our webinar. I want to once again thank Amy Bollinger and Steve Bauer. Did I get that right?
You got it.
Yeah, all right. Should have gone to your LinkedIn page. This is great. This YouTube video will be up sometime next week, and we will be emailing out the participants so you have it. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Jason. Great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.